Welcome to the Center of Light Radio with spiritual teacher, intuitive, musician, composer, and best-selling author of The Divine Principle, Anchoring Heaven on Earth, your host, Keith Anthony Blanchard.
Welcome one, welcome all, coast to coast, pole to pole, all around the world on the internet. Thanks to the marvel of technology, I'm coming at you live on the Inception Radio Network. This is Keith Anthony Blanchard. You're listening to Center of Light Radio, Center of Divine Unfoldment and Reinforcement, radio for the soul. Are you a spiritual seeker who is ready to move forward in your life? Let me tell you about my lifelong work, RPM, Recognize, Plug In, and Manifest Your Life. If you're wanting to shift from struggling into feeling that life is effortless, send me an email to book a free session at keithanthonyblanchard@gmail.com. Title that subject, hey Keith, I want my free session. We'll get you going. If you find yourself maybe in a block, you want a little more spiritual expansion, you want to have a greater degree of intuition, whatever it is you are wanting in the spiritual arena, I am your go-to guy. You can also go to centeroflightradio.com. The bottom of the page, you'll see a red Ferrari. Click on that red Ferrari. It'll take you to a page for RPM. And on that page, it'll tell you what you get, what you will be able to create. And also remember, again, you can go to keithanthonyblanchard@gmail.com and let me know that you want a free session. Also, next to the right of that red Ferrari on the opening page, you're going to see a sign-up form. Fill it out. You will get bundles and bundles of all of my work till present date. Check this out, for free. I woke up one morning and intuition said, Keith, you need to give all of your work all the way up to current day for free. And I said, give my work away for free. And this is not separation, mind you, as if I'm here and there's something there. This was my intuitive dialogue that was happening. And he said, Keith, you don't have the right to hoard this work. It's not right for you to keep it to yourself. Give it away. And so that's what I'm doing. So make sure you fill out that sign-up form, and also you will get access to my ongoing newsletter that's going to be happening shortly. February 14th, Valentine's Day, you can contact me, keithanthonyblanchard@gmail.com, or you can find me on social media, facebook.com/KeithAnthonyBlanchard. Valentine's Day Self-Love Symposium. Spiritual teachers from all around the world are going to be offering their heart, and the admission to this wonderful 4-hour event is your heart. That's the gig. Get in there and be passionate about what's happening. Now it's time to get down to Center of Light Radio business. Today my guest is Mr. Michael Mirdad, and we're going to be talking about the gifts and challenges of the spiritual path. Using clear and easy to apply insights and tools, Michael Mirdad will share some of the most important things everyone needs to know to take a quantum leap in spiritual and personal development, as well as dealing with the most common challenges on the path. This talk will cover such topics as applying love and forgiveness as a means of raising one's consciousness and vibration. Let me tell you about Michael himself. Michael is a world-renowned spiritual teacher, healer, and author. He is the author of the best-selling books, You're Not Going Crazy, You're Just Waking Up, Creating Fulfilling Relationships, The Heart of A Course in Miracles, which I love that course, dear Lord, I love that course, and the Book of Love and Forgiveness. He has also been the spiritual leader at Unity of Sedona, now for over 6 years. For over 35 years, Michael has transformed the lives of thousands of clients and facilitated thousands of classes, lectures, and workshops throughout the world on mastery, spirituality, relationships, and healing, and is rightly noted by many authors as a teacher's teacher and a healer's healer. Welcome to Center of Light Radio, Mr. Michael Mirdad.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
Michael, I always start off my show by asking my guests what brought them into the field of spirituality and awakening. Was this something by you that you were led into just because of a prompting, or was pain your prompting?
Well, I always say we can learn the easy way or the hard way. And I can say, thank God, that this time around it was the easy way, in that the prompting was something that just felt like it was naturally there. People are sometimes, they have stories of drama, trauma, loss, that brings them to the path. But for me, I'm one of those, and I know that there's other people out there like this, that I just kind of felt that connection all the time. I'm not saying, it's not a boast. It's more like I really feel grateful. I'm kind of lucky that way, that I just felt, one of those folks that even as a kid, whenever there was a show on, or the rare movies in the old days that were a little more spiritual, I was on it, man. Music, I love spiritual themes in music, whether it was a one-hit band or whether it was a band that was all the time spiritual. I always loved love. I always loved spirituality. I always loved anything related and just ate it up. It just felt like, my God, because at the time, it just wasn't as readily available. So we're really in a fortunate time that it's become, and sometimes it has happened so slowly people don't realize it. We take for granted that it wasn't there once upon a time, and it's more readily available now. Spirituality support systems, groups, and so on. So it's just something that was always there inside of me, and it just took some time to find my tribes or my people of like mind, and that was quite a relief. Okay, no worries, no worries. So yeah, if they're having a technical issue, so I'll elaborate a little bit. The spiritual path, I always say to people, it's a question I commonly ask groups. Like, hey, do you remember getting on the spiritual path? And folks, well, yeah, and some people like, yeah, and what was it that brought that on? Well, I went through a divorce, or someone passed away. Someone gave me a book. It's not always negative or difficult or challenging situations, but even, hey, somebody gave me a book, or it's all the variety of things. And then it's always intriguing to ask, like I'm asking you folks listening, do you remember when you got on the spiritual path and what it was that prompted that? So we say, sure, and we remember some moments here and there, but check this out. Technically, if we have a spirit within us, then that means we've always been on the spiritual path. I mean, think about it. Any path we walk is a spiritual path because we have a spirit within us. So there's really, I mean, there may be times when we seem to have gotten on the spiritual path, but we've always been on it. Even if we're talking about prostitution and drug addiction, or or just things that seem a little more acceptable and easy, raising children, going to school, whatever it was always part of our spiritual path because our spirit has always been here. The only thing that changes really is whether or not it was the easy way or the hard way. Yeah, we're always on the spiritual path, but it's not always being done the easy way, right? There's times when, wow, we really learn to be christened by the Holy 2x4 rather than sprinkled and anointed with water blessings, So that's how how it is, and it's important for us to accept that so that we can look back and say, wow, now that I'm understanding that, I can look at my life and stop telling people, husbands, children, I wish you were on the spiritual path. Instead, what we can say is, oops, sorry about that. I was trying to wish you were on the spiritual path, and in truth, you've always been on the path. I just didn't realize it. You were on your path, and I was asking you to get on my path. And it's okay for us to apologize to partners and children that we were maybe overly pushing to kind of, get onto our path, finding our way, our own way, and letting them find their own way, if that makes sense. You can let me know when you're back on. But today I was asked to share some of the tools, and this is really cool. I mean, this could easily be made into a book. I don't think it's one that I would write, but it could easily be made into a book. What are these essential tools for spirituality or on the spiritual path? Because there's all kinds. I mean, you could say, well, tarot cards, going to a spiritual gathering. I mean, those aren't tools. Those are sort of little things within the tools. The 7 primary tools on the spiritual path, how could the first one not be related to connecting with spirit? I mean, God first in all things. Whatever you think, see God to be, let's think, God first in all things. So learning to pray and meditate is an essential tool. Learning essentially to commune with God in some form, in some way. Commune, prayer, meditation, and learning to just become that presence. Not to, if your thing is to pray to something out there, that's fine. But it's really beautiful to draw that presence within and awaken something within so that we become an integrated part of that divinity. The second tool that I would comment on is, prayer and meditation. You know, as you heard mentioned in your host here, Course in Miracles is a wonderful book and a good example of what that means to practice, communion, yet in the form of prayer meditation. A lot of us say God is synonymous with love, and we have to understand that love in action, love manifested, is not about snuggles. It's not about partnerships and romance. That stuff is really fleeting.
Michael, I'm back. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, thank you.
My apologies, sir. I don't know what's going on, but I just caught what you said. Love is not about romance, snuggles, and warm, fuzzy feelings. It's something I say all the time. And again, thank you for your patience, everyone. It's not. It's deeper than that. That is such the superficial layer of love. Is that, if that's love at all? You got two people in a relationship and they've been dating for however many years, and one decides for whatever reasons, I'm going to leave, and the other person says, but please don't. And you say, well, why? And they say, because I love you. That is erroneous. You are afraid to death.
Right. It's kind of silly in a way. And mind you, I understand it. We understand it. Patience and love, and everything meant to be to them. But that's called romance, not really love. Or if you're going to call it love, lowercase l, fine. But when you and I practice, any of us practice forgiveness, we're practicing love in its greatest expression on earth. That and unconditional love, meaning to be unconditional with people. And the practice of forgiveness is one of the greatest expressions of that. When we're beyond this world, when we're in oneness and the bliss of divinity or divine consciousness, we don't sit around and practice forgiveness. When we're completely immersed and one with Spirit, there's actually nothing to forgive because we're in the love. Love expressed. Love when it's expressed is called forgiveness. But when you're in the state of love, there's nothing to forgive because, who is it that can offend you when you're divine? Who is it that can leave you if you're one with all beings?
Right. So, I did a Burst of Light live. It's something I do on social media often. And by the way, I would like to get you on something else I do. Because, Michael, you and I swear, we think exactly and feel just alike as far as the spiritual dynamic. Last night on this particular live broadcast, I said, if there is a God that is offended, how can you blaspheme the divine? It's just literally impossible. Martin Luther King had that covered. I mean, someone spit on him. He took out a napkin and wiped it off and said, "Excuse me, sir, I think this belongs to you." I mean, we should give the divine a little more credence. And then what we do is, if the divine can ever be offended by human frailty, I'm never going to make the divine a slave to human's behavior.
Right. It's kind of preposterous. I understand it. Like I said, it's nice to practice being understanding to people and their strange relationships with God. There's a saying, and I think you'll be able to relate to this. Scriptures tell us God made man in his own image, but what has happened is man now makes God in his image. We make God in our own image. We make God like a parent, like a dad to be afraid of, a mom who's not present or whatever. So that's saying, and man made God in his own image. I use that often, and people will go, wow, that's powerful. That's deep when you think about it. Man made God. It's like God made us in his image and we return the favor, So we decided to make God what we want God to be rather than really the allowing and understanding of what Spirit means within us. So we kind of put this box together in our hearts and souls and say, we want everything to fit that. I want you to fit that. I want partners to fit that. I want my children to fit that. But incidentally, that saying, and man made God in his own image, was, I think I remember that from the 70s. It was on Jethro Tull's Aqualung album, I think.
I dig it, brother. I saw an interview with him the other day, and it was just joyous. He broke out his flute, and he started talking about how he can play very nice, and he played this nice little piece, this little fanfare. And then he said, but I like to play dirty. He started doing some growling inside the flute. It was just really neat to hear, dude. So you're a musician as well, is that right?
No, I can find notes and play around and tinker around, but no, I'm not a trained musician. Don't have that talent.
Michael, you were talking about just a minute ago about painting God in our image, creating God in our image. Would you agree with the idea that how we see the world and how we think things should happen in the world is how we think God sees us. For example, if we believe in someone needing to be punished, somewhere inside we're believing in a punishing God. If we believe on the outside world that there's no abundance to be had, we believe that God does not provide. And so we project everything onto, is that what you're saying, but differently?
Yeah, and you just said it really beautifully. It's called projection, right? We project our image onto God. We project everything, but the truth is we're ultimately, whatever issues we have with God and with ourselves, we project outside. So when we think people are mean to us, and this is I want to be very careful about saying this, because when we're talking about these spiritual tools, the third one I would name has to do with responsibility. And this is important because if I say when we're mistreated in the outside world, it's what we think God wants to do to us, or how harsh we are on ourselves. But saying that can really hurt feelings for some, because they'll say, look, I was born and I was abused as a child. It's hard for that person to really understand the concept we just shared, but it's not meant offensively like that, and it's not meant to blame. Like if a person's abused, it doesn't mean you've done something wrong per se, but it does mean, I would say this, when a person is born into a world and experiences a lot of abuses, somehow the soul of that person also believes that they're flawed, and they could be manifesting those kinds of events in their lives to mirror to them how hard they are in themselves. Maybe they're, I'm just going to use an example. It's not meant to target anybody, but maybe if a person was brought up in a religion, a fundamental religion, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, or Catholicism and all that, whatever, let's say a fundamental religion or a fundamental, very traditional culture, and that was really beat into them, their religion and whatever, and God's going to get you, God's going to get you. Okay, let's say that one person lives like that in previous lifetime. Now, picture that person incarnates again. Why would it be impossible that they would carry some of those beliefs in and then have them mirrored to them? Now, the good news is that it being mirrored has a purpose, which is to get past it, not to do it again. It's more like Spirit is saying, I'm encouraging you to now move past that, so you don't interpret me, God, as being this harsh, vindictive thing. So why don't you this lifetime look at it, let it go, and find love instead? So there's our other option.
So Michael, you and I, many people of the like, we understand the concept, the idea of God and who it is truly, and what it is, where it is, and who it is. And so when it comes to our time of passing, I get to this place and I see a light. I can't get there fast enough, so to speak, right? And then you take someone, as you mentioned, from a fundamental background, whatever that background may be, that believes in such a dogmatic view that if when I pass, because I'm a born sinner, the last thing I want to do is go near this light that is planning to throw me in a pit of fire. And so someone, in that moment, because of no time and no physicality, time begins to manifest immediately. So they begin to fall into this spiritual fetal position of guilt. And they can end up in a lower astral plane where they will get plenty of the punishment that they may feel that they are due.
Right. That's exactly right. People will, we're co-creating our reality. We're co-creating the universe. The universe, they say, is still being created, but it's being created because we're still creating it. But the universe, including our personal lives, our most close surroundings to the most vast parts of the universe is, and our life is being created, co-created by us. So to use in a sort of a way, quantum physics as an example, my world, what I see outside, is a hologram of me inside. So what I see, though, is a collision of two things. So here comes my reality, and then here comes our reality. And when those two collide, they become, right here where the fingers engage or overlap, becomes the material universe. So my thoughts and consciousness, our thoughts and consciousness. So it's not just mine. It's ours as well. We're watching the show right now. And what is the show we're experiencing or listening to? I'm here contributing, but so are we, because there's me and us, there's you and us, there's the listener and us. We're co-creating this. And so literally and figuratively, because let's say, for example, somebody writes in a question, they're contributing to it. That's more blunt, more blatant. But there's also just with somebody just watching or listening, their thoughts have already gone into my mind and your mind and all of our minds that are watching, listening, co-creating what we're going to say, even though it seems impossible. You go, well, they're just talking and doing a show. How could they hear my thoughts or whatever? But it's true. It happens. Kind of like a sci-fi kind of a movie where somebody realizes as they're talking, like it could even be looked at like Horton the Who, right? You're sitting there talking and you start hearing someone else contribute to the conversation. Well, who is that person? Well, it's this little being that says that it's on in another world on the head of a flower. It's kind of like that, where these waves and streams of thought and questions are there, not just people calling in and not just people writing in. When I do talks at sacred services for people or in spiritual centers, I've learned to explain, because they'll say, "Wow, Michael, you're like speaking directly to me," like they say in a way I've never heard before. Like I'm thinking specific thoughts going on in my life. I sat down and you went right to the exact same wording. How does that happen? And I can say, well, because I'm wonderful and amazing at that, But the truth, what I share with people is, it's not about I don't sit around developing a skill on how to read somebody's mind or read their aura per se, even though that's all valid. I'm saying I don't sit there and try to read 100 and 200 and 500 and 800, people in a room. What I do is first surrender to the divine in consciousness. Then, and that is opening myself up. But when that happens, when I connect with spirit, just as most people like you would know, when we connect with spirit, we open ourselves up, we realize the more we connect with spirit and our true selves, we're actually one with all. So if I'm one with all, how is it that I could not hear the voices, the feelings and stuff going on in an audience? Yeah. We don't want to be overly sympathetic and start picking up all the stuff of everyone. That's a little hyper-stimulating. But it's really beautiful, because what makes an intuitive the best intuitive is not the technique. It's the love of the other people, because love will give you the information they need to hear. So it's the love of the people, not just, wow, I'm amazing and I have a skill and you'll pay me for it. It's more like, how would I not know what's going on for you if you're my partner, you're my lover, you're my the audience, you're my children? How would we not know what each other wants? And that's why when people talk about trying to fight to create a better world, I'm one person that irritates people, because I will say it'll never work. We'll never be able to fix the world with the same mind that created it. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's insanity.
Right. We have to access a higher consciousness and bring that to the world. So you're not going to fight to save the whales. You have to love the whales, and you have to love the people that kill the whales. And when there's enough love, people, if you're included, here's the whales, and here are the people killing the whales. And if I include both of them in my head, in my mind, in a state of love, both will be at peace, and one could not harm another. So it's remember, my love and our love. Because there's a me and there's a we. And those two co-create the universe as we know it, the world as we know it. So all of that coming together, we start to see a very, very different world.
We're at the bottom of the hour. Michael Mirdad, would you give out your contact information so our listening audience can find out more about you and the awesome, powerful work you're doing around this globe, sir?
Yes. Well, my website primarily is the source. I have a Facebook page, a public page, and Michael Mirdad, Mirdad. And I have a website, michaelmirdad.com, and it's got, everything on it, articles, books, supplies, those kinds of things. Also on YouTube, there's a page, but also Facebook. But YouTube, they have catalogs now, libraries now, where you could just go watch 100 different talks. And I can say, I don't dilly-dally. Like, you wouldn't go and watch a talk of mine that would be kind of padded.
Sugar-coated.
Yeah, sugar-coated. It's like, you're going to hear something, it goes somewhere. If the topic is on boundaries or codependence, it's a study. You're gonna learn it and maybe understand it more than most people that claim to be experts in the topic.
You know, Michael, you were talking just a little bit ago about if you want to save the whales, you don't love the whales and hate the people doing the killing. So, and I say this all the time, you know, you can water the weed or you can water the plant. And if you want something, I give you a big high five, you say, I no longer choose to hang around these people. That's a great idea. But instead, turn to the plant and begin to give it the attention it needs by saying, this is now what I choose. And also we were talking about, I heard you mention something a bit ago when we were talking about projection. What are your thoughts about people who are always concerned what other people think? And do you see that as a form of self-judgment that they don't want to own because I don't want to take ownership about these thoughts that I think about myself. So I'm going to place this on someone else. I'm going to project this outside and blame them, hopefully that they're the ones doing the thinking of this about me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's codependent for me to be concerned what other people think, and yet I like to always address two sides of something, meaning I think it's beautiful to be sensitive to people's needs. For example, if you're of a certain faith, I don't need to tell you you're wrong in your faith and that I'm right in my faith. It's nice to honor people where they're at, and even if the person's not doing something, say, healthy, the person says, well, I really still like to drink and it relaxes me. I don't say to them, oh no, that's an addiction. I just say, great. How do you like it? What do you drink? Oh, what's your favorite drink? I like to meet people at the level they're at and start there. If I'm being asked something, I don't walk around like whatever towns I've lived in, I almost have never mentioned who I am or what I do. It's kind of more covert, and I like it because it's evidence that I am doing practicing what I preach. Meaning, the couple of towns I've lived in, Sedona for 8 years, I think, and before that, my last place of residence might have been 20 years. And people in those towns never knew who I was. They might have found out because, like in Sedona, I teach in a location here at Unity of Sedona. So they've caught on. They know who this guy is when they see me here and there. But generally, I see it as a test of my character, my integrity, to see if I can practice what I preach. And so, if I go to a store, I don't tell them who I am. But when I leave, I wonder, have I made a difference? In some way, was I just kind? Not because, hi, here's my card, come and see me at Unity. I don't do any kind of sales pitching. I'm running for mayor. I don't kiss babies. If people find me, if people find me, they find me. But it's important for us all as a maturing to, I'm not saying don't care what other people think. I care, but don't let it control you or affect you negatively. I think all of us have been children. If we're on earth, we've been children at one point. And when you're a child, man, it's beat into you, really drummed into you. You what we say goes, and we're already living in a codependence of doing what others say. So we're programmed to do that. So I think it's beautiful if anybody watching, listening, can come to a place of saying, if they did a barometer, checking in, and you could check on how much your work has done, how much you've grown, you'll be able to know partly by how much you're able to own your own beliefs, and not be controlled by somebody else. Now, I don't believe in swinging the opposite of I was controlled, now I'm going to swing way over here and say, to heck with you all. I think that's reacting still. In the middle is where we can be and need to be. It's like, I'm not going to be over here or over here. I'm in my center where my beliefs are, and I'm going to honor that. And if people are overly hurt by that or try to hurt me for that, sometimes we do have to say, too much water under the bridge and walk. And let me just close on that question with this. Folks that go through this, it's important to understand that there's a time, typically there's a few stages we all go through. To keep it simple, just remember this, a few stages. There's the stage where we're often abused and, in whatever form, abused, oppressed, or whatever it happens to be. The opposite extreme, where often, if it was our family that did that, or a husband or wife that did that, we often do the opposite. And we go, okay, That's it. Nobody's ever going to control me again. Now we learn to speak up. Now in the New Age community or in the psychology community, that's called finding your voice. That's not really finding your voice. You've just become annoying. You know, you went from being trampled on to now overstepping and compensating by telling everyone around you, everybody needs to hear what I have to say. See, you're compensating. But there's a point where the pressure eases. And we come back to center where we need not say anything. There's no need. I don't have to be heard. I don't have to be seen. It's quite beautiful. I'm in my center. And, you know, so family was treating us a certain way. We often leave family and say they need to learn that they can't treat me that way, which is really healthy to do. But it's not the end of the story. The end of the story is when we get so centered that even if we were around them, which we don't have to be, but even if we were around them, we're so strong in our center, man, that we just feel immune to their stuff. And if their stuff gets to be aggressive and abusive, if we visit them, we can say, you know, this doesn't seem like it's working. See you in another. I'll test it all in another 10 years. You know, peace out.
Yeah, we can always love people from a distance. Something you said, Michael, is something I believe so strongly about being centered. And I use the word being planted like a lightning rod. For example, we definitely don't want to be swayed by the negative. Well, here's a new option for you as well. Don't be swayed by the positive, because when you can become so planted and you can become, quote, the dominant tone, if you have that kind of spirituality about you, dear Lord, watch what happens to the room that you walk in. That being said, what goes on inside of the process of Michael Mirdad? Let's say, for example, you're out and about, wherever it may be, and you meet someone and you know, they may be going through a dynamic without saying anything. What happened inside of you? And the reason I'm asking this question is because, Michael, I play music for a living, so I'm always out networking with people. And someone introduces me to John or Jill Doe, and I find a quality about this person, be it their voice, a dialect, a pendant around their neck, just a physical, beautiful appearance, or just whatever it is that I find that is just beautiful that this person is emoting. And I begin to hyper-focus on it. I begin to massage it, and I use it as a doorway for me to connect to Creator. And when I begin to do this dynamic, do this thing, I literally see God step out of this person right in front of my face, because I'm so focused on the beauty of this person at the moment. What are your thoughts? What happens to you inside of you when you're going through the process of meeting someone for the first time? Are you speaking to them on many different levels?
It's really many levels, because but the main level, the most common go-to thing that I do is connect. Everything's about, for me, is about connecting. So if a person, and this is kind of funny because I've shared stories like this when I've done some talks, and I sometimes share these stories. But, you know, for example, I driving down the street and I see, let's say I see a yard sale or something, and I stop and go, oh, is there anything interesting? You know, I stop. Now, at this one time I stopped at this place, there was a guy there, and he just approached me and started talking. Now, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about spirit, God, love, forgiveness, you know, cool things like that. No, he starts talking to me about golf, you know, and I'm like, wow, like, I mean, to me, no offense to golfers, I'm saying for me personally, I know nothing about it. So this could have been like listening to bowling on the radio. Okay, I mean, you can imagine something that would have been less interesting, but my job was to find something about it of interest, because he's in my life, not to turn me into a golfer, but I'm saying, how do you connect with the person? See, that's what I meant earlier. Sometimes we have our thing, and then we say, I'm not going to do anything else that anybody else wants me to do, and we swing way over here where we refuse to meet them at their level. We're going to do it our way. That's still a reaction. So what's beautiful is when we really truly grow in the middle somewhere, we can find a way to connect with anybody. You know, we don't lose patience. A quick example again, that individual, I just remembered a name or two, hearing it somewhere about golfers, and I would throw in that name into the conversation and let them talk. And this guy just glowed because he could talk about golf, and he could educate this kid about, I'm like 60, but you know, he can educate this younger guy than him about golf. And so it made his day. And that is God in action. Like, I don't, you know, spirit isn't always about just when people start chanting together.
It's all spirit.
That's right.
It's all spirit. For example, Mike, like you're talking about this golfer. You know, I may not necessarily be into the field or whatever dynamic you're into in your life, what brings you joy. But what I do is find out why it illuminates you, and that's where I'm going to meet you. Is in the illumination and the love of what you're doing.
Right. You see, because separation is the belief. Once we believe in separation or do anything to add to the concept of separation, we're adding to the separation of God, separation from ourselves, separation from each other. It's all going to blast together. But the opposite is connection. So if you're a counselor, a psychic, you don't just try to wow them with your skills, but instead you meet them. That's why I said when I'm teaching, I'm connecting with spirit, but I'm also connecting with the people there. And we're all then going to dance. And you mentioned being a musician. I always remember Cat Stevens, his last live performance before he disappeared for years. His last live performance that I knew about was, you know, he started playing, and at some point he just got ticked off. He threw a tantrum, and he unplugged his guitar and just threw it all down and walked off the stage and wasn't seen for years. That was an act of selfishness, because he wasn't saying, what does the audience want, and what do they want? So a musician, no offense to the ones that do this, but a musician who plays for themselves might as well just sit in their room and play, you know, but to me that can be a very selfish act. I'm not saying betray yourself, but I'm saying don't just play for yourself. If those people are there to listen, whether they're paying or not, if they're there, we should consider them. And that's back to your question, which is, how much and one of your questions, which is how much do we let other people affect us? As long as the effect is for love's purpose, as long as the effect is because I care about you guys, I would like to know what you're looking for. Would you like me to play that particular song? You know, that's what they're there for, you know? Look at Paul McCartney. The dude is like 103 years old. He goes on
yeah,
tour.
right.
He goes on tour and he plays for 3 and more hours because he likes doing it. But he knows you folks want to hear certain songs. He doesn't say, you're lucky to even see me. I'm a Beatle. Let me just play half of one song, I'll leave, and you guys can give me $1 million. He doesn't do that. It's more like, this is what they want, you know, and I'm not saying we owe it to them, but spiritually we do. Meaning, if we really love people, then we would make the effort to understand where they're coming from. So even when somebody has a challenge, and this is going to get tricky here for a second, but even when someone has a challenge, try to listen and say, what's going on? How can I help? Now they go ahead and share. Watch yourselves, because when you work with them and you realize you are trying to offer help, you're trying to listen, but it's never enough. They still want to talk, they still want to yell, they still want to complain, they still want to blame. You can say, okay, round 2, I hear what you're saying, and you can try a second time. But how many times should you let it go on and on? And here's my point. When you see that the people don't want to really change, they just want to vent. You're now adding to the problem by listening to them because you're enabling their venting. There's a point where we have to draw the line and say, you know, I don't think you should say, listen, it seems to me like you don't even want to heal, so get lost because that'll cause more problem. But what you can say is, it doesn't seem like I'm the person that can help you with that. That's the truth.
Right.
See, it's tactful. Love to me is always tactful. So I would say, you know, wow, you know, I'd love to help, but it doesn't seem like I'm the person that could be, you know, can help you. That's a very beautiful way of saying, I've tried several times, and I don't care if you're my partner, even if you're my own child. If I have tried several times to work with you and it's not working, I watch for signs. If we're not getting anywhere, or if where we are is getting worse, that's not a good sign. So what I would tell folks is that becomes a negative control experience where they're trying to control the situation, but for negative, you know, ends, rather than, listen, give me just a minute to control the conversation. I would like to share my feelings. And you say, as a healer, counselor, go ahead. You have the floor. That's giving a positive control to them. Now they have control. They can share. But there's a point where the part of them that doesn't really want to heal starts hooking you into their game. And that's called negative control. And that situation will not end in healing. So we have to say, well, for the sake of my own sanity, I'm going to continue moving in that direction of healing, meaning finding peace in the situation. But it doesn't seem like my words or comments or whatever it is are helping you. So why don't we break it off? And if I can recommend somebody, let me know, or something like that. We have to find our center again whenever we start to deviate from it, or when people try to push and pull us from it.
Michael, from the chat room, we have a question from DD, one of my dear friends. He says, are there good ways to forgive ourselves for letting go of bad connections?
Say that again?
Are there good ways to forgive ourselves for letting go of bad connections?
Well, here's a very practical answer to that. First of all, you let go of a connection, all right? I mean, the most obvious thing is it is not the will of God that you hold on to that against yourself. So, but if that's not a good enough reason to let it go,
nice. I like that. Very nice.
Yeah, then if that's not enough reason, because sometimes it's not, you know, we still hurt. Let me tell you, ask yourself this question. Someone, you parted ways. Let me ask you, ask yourself, did you do what you could? Did you do what you could to bring it to peace or to help the situation or create a better relationship? Okay, let's say you did. Secondly, when you parted ways, did you purposefully try to hurt them? Because if you did, you should feel guilty and bad about it because you did something hurtful. So you should try to heal and repent and ask for forgiveness or whatever you want to call it, anything like that. But, most of us, what I'm saying is most of us, when we end things like that, it is not our intention to hurt. So if you did not intend to hurt somebody, but you happen to still feel hurt, I want you to tell yourself, since I know I did what I could to help the situation, and I know I didn't purposefully cause harm, there's nothing to feel guilty about. And then here's another angle in regard to forgiveness. Forgiveness is practiced in a lot of ways. I wrote the book on love and forgiveness, it's called. The Book of Love and Forgiveness. But here's the simplest technique out of everything in there. First, never hate anyone, including yourself. So when you're asking about self-forgiveness, I would say to yourself, I refuse to hate myself. I refuse to hate the other person or anyone. Number one. Two, are there any lessons I can learn from this? Are there lessons you can learn from not letting go quicker or more easily? Are there lessons you can learn about, maybe I was a little impatient when I ended it. I might have been too abrupt. I might not have communicated clearly. I think I can learn from that. Learning from it means you're good to go. Like, as long as you extracted a lesson from it, good job. And the third thing is, no matter who it is and what they've done, see, I'm not going to give you the speech about, gee, you should love them. If somebody's kicking you around and hurting you and abusing you and your children, I'm not telling you have to pretend to like them. I'm saying this, refuse to hate them. Ask what you can learn from the situation, whatever it is. And third, try to affirm that in some way, somewhere in that person, there is a light made in God's image. You don't have to know that light. You don't have to find that light. You don't have to figure out why it's so obscured and not visible. All you have to do is affirm. Isn't this funny? My experience with that person, I refuse to hate them. I will learn what I can from this, but I'm also going to affirm that in them, I don't care who it is, in that person, there is a light made in God's image. And here's the beautiful part, because it's almost where we started a while ago, one of your comments and questions. That light is in that person. And if I am not willing to say that that person, whomever it is or whatever they did, if I'm going to say that somebody is not capable of having the light of God in them, I have now drawn the line as to how far I can grow, because I just affirmed my limit.
And the lesson will come back around.
What's that?
And the lesson will come back around.
Oh, yeah. Until we recognize there is nobody, no alien, no being, no angel or demon that doesn't have a spark of light somewhere. I'm not saying that people are coming from that light. I'm not saying the actions of mass murderers or psychopaths and megalomaniacs, Hitlers and whatever, or even just mean parents. I'm not saying that these people are coming from their light or are in touch with that light. But you see, as soon as we affirm that there's a light in them, you know what happens to it next? As soon as you bring your attention to even a particle in this universe, whether it's, waves, the structure of atoms, the structure of molecules. As soon as we bring attention to a wave, it becomes a particle. It starts to become something. So as soon as I affirm that in you, somewhere, there is a spark of light, the spark of light starts to ignite. And it sounds really strange, but if people could say to whomever, Hitler or whomever, I'm not at all supporting their behaviors, meaning if it were me doing the exercise, in no way, shape, or form are your behaviors okay or appropriate. And I even believe in speaking out when you're in a situation to do so, if that's what the moment calls for. Like, I don't believe in enabling hurtful behavior. I tell people all the time, if someone's hurting someone, it's quite all right for you to say, not today. That's it. It ends here. If you're going to gossip and hate somebody, I'm okay to say, listen, did you notice you're doing hate speech to that person? In case you haven't noticed, I'm the other person in the room. I'm not into it. Like, for them to hear no is a good thing sometimes. But my main point was, when we affirm that spark of light in a person, it starts to ignite. And to imagine that you or I could make a difference in the life and the consciousness of a Hitler. Okay, you can say, well, he doesn't deserve it. Okay, fine, you can believe that, but listen to this. But if I could make a difference in him, could it mean that he would never come back and do the same thing? That means you and I can save millions, hundreds of millions, or who knows, billions of lives on this planet if we can kind of nip it in the bud. And this is what I call loving the hell out of someone.
Michael, I have lots of guests come on the show, and I often put this question to them, and it can be a difficult question to answer because it's more experiential than it is an exercise or giving someone a little gift and have them to just, wear it around their neck. How does one go into the state of forgiveness or truly letting go of something? We can say, well, this is what you do, but that's really not the case at all, because we can lead someone to the door, but they have to open it. In your experience, how would you offer to the listening audience for them to find that place of truly being able to surrender and or let go and or forgive? That seems to be, it's not just like a tool that you can hand someone. They have to go inside and find that light switch, so to speak.
Well, the 3 steps I just shared are the way, and it'll work. There's other techniques that might suit other people certain ways, but that's really going to be important. But here's one other really important piece to it all, which is, if people would understand that forgiveness is a process, not an event. People go, okay, fine, I'm going to go ahead and forgive you. Abracadabra, done. And they go, okay, fine, it's done. Now they're wondering, a year later, they go, why is this still coming up? Because they expected this to be an abracadabra, which means, to a degree, it might not have been as sincere as we might have hoped. So that's important for us to be responsible and look at that. But on another note, the concept of forgiveness, the act of forgiveness, is a process, meaning today, as far as I know, I'm willing to give this up. Okay, so I do. A week later, I have some tears and I don't know where it's coming from. When I look at it, I realize it's related to some of the hurts that somebody might have seemingly caused me. Okay, so now I work on that. I feel kind of relieved. I feel kind of, open inside, a little more spacious and free. Then maybe it's somebody that created some hurt in me when I was, let's say, a child. Okay, so now I go on and I have children. As I have children and they reach the age I was when I was abused, it could start triggering stuff inside of me as I'm feeling this kind of resonance, this energy, like the tuning forks, So my children reaching a certain age puts out a vibe, and my body feels it, and it triggers the memories in me when I was a child of that age. Okay, so now let's pretend I work on that, or let's pretend I stuff it or ignore it. It's still going to come back when my children have children and reach that age, or when I see a child in a store that's the age I was when I was her. The universe is going to keep trying to bring from here and there these things that seem annoying to us. Why am I meeting another person like that? Typically, it would only be because it's helping to potential. It's bringing potential of releasing something to a more authentic and thorough level, and that can seem a bit inconvenient, but there's nothing more important. Forgiveness, love and forgiveness establishes us back to our divinity. What could be more important than that?
Michael, we have time for maybe one more question, about 2 minutes, if you would. In your opinion, in your experience, what is more powerful? Formal prayer, trying to convince God to help someone out, or, or sending someone your direct energy through a visualization process and just loving them, sending that all their way? What are your thoughts on that, sir? We got about 2 minutes.
The latter of the two would be the one I would lean to, but I would say, in another sense, so that we're fair, and the things that we most believe in will work the most. So if somebody really believes, get to the knees and tears in the eyes and pray to the Almighty, God up in the sky, please. If that's where they're at, I think it's beautiful, because anything we truly believe in is really a beautiful thing to do. So them doing that, I think, is remarkable. Which one is a little more, let's call it, evolved? Prayer, the first level of prayer, there's people that don't pray at all, but they don't realize that even our comments are prayers. Even our complaints are prayers, but they're just not very good, right. But so prayer in the form of begging God for something is a very fundamental level. It's a fundamental base level. It's better than nothing. But shifting to affirmative prayer, which is a positive, not a I want this, but rather I'm affirming that this is so, is more evolved, and even more so decrees. Decrees are like affirmations on steroids. This is when it's not just like I'm affirming good things. I'm like, like in the Bible, Jesus says, decree a thing and it will be so. Like, that's really like, it's affirmations, but with intense faith behind it, and on and on. So decrees are very powerful. And I should say, and then further than that, even further than that, is just communion with God. See, because if I say, God, can you help bring me a new car? Picture this. Bring me a new car. Or I affirm that a new car is coming my way. Or I decree that I have this and that, and by a certain date, great. But check this out. If I learn to commune with God and I become one with God, what is it that I could not have in my life?
Right.
I would say that it wouldn't be there if I'm one with God, if God is all. So ultimately the communion type. But if I tell you that the ultimate prayer is communion and the ultimate forgiveness is when you realize there's nothing left to forgive, then people try to jump to that final step and commune when they don't know how, or experience there's no need to forgive anything anymore, when in fact they're still hurting. So even though I'm saying there's higher levels, we have to really be careful and be responsible to only work the ones that where we're at in our consciousness, where our beliefs are. And so,
Michael, I hate to cut you off, buddy. I hate it. Well, no, let me rephrase that. We're at the time of the hour. Time goes by so fast when I'm living in the bliss strata. Please come back. My apologies to you about some of the sound issues that I'm having, and audio video issues. Is there a quick closing thought? I mean, we got a matter of a half a minute.
Yes. I would like to just say this. Whatever we're talking about here, you like it, you don't like it, and so on, the one thing I would like to affirm for us all is rediscover oneness with God, find a way to commune with God, and remember one of the best ways is through humility. Pray sincerely, forgive sincerely. Doesn't matter the technique. If it's sincere, go for it. Sincerity and humility, that's the way back home.
Everyone, Mr. Michael Mirdad, I say all the time, passion, sincerity, humility, and what is the other one? Passion, sincerity, humility, and wow, it's fleeted me. So everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard here, your host of Center of Light Radio, every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find me here in this chair. I want to say thank you to my wonderful guest today, and thank you to a very full chat room. I'm going to be seeing you next week. Always remember, when you have nothing to do late at night, you're just laying there in the bed, you might as well be doing something. Breathe. Breathe like you want something beyond what you've ever known, and you will find yourself shortly living a definite cosmic life stream, and all things are in there. Trust me, that's where the good stuff's at. Get in there and do your thing. Make your life expand to the bliss that you came here to experience. Peace, love, and light to you.